Well, why don't we just get started then? My name is Nick Astor. I'm the founder and publisher of triplepundit.com. We are a media platform for the conversation on sustainability in business, which is a bit of a mouthful, but what that means is we write articles about sustainability primarily for a business audience. It's a mix of big corporations, social entrepreneurs, startups, basically people like you. We feel that business has a role to play in advancing sustainability. And we advocate the concept of the triple bottom line, or balancing economic, environmental, and social priorities. That's what we're all about. I'm joined by Brittany Furrow, who is the Senior Director of Sustainability at Walmart, a large company, as we define it. And we're going to just jump right into it since we only have 30 minutes. We're going to be talking about agriculture. We're going to be talking about Walmart's role in that, which I'm eager to learn a little bit more about. And without further ado, we'll get going. So Brittany, we all know that Walmart's in the grocery business, in addition to being a big retailer of all kinds of stuff. But give me a little bit of an idea of the scale. How many Americans depend on Walmart for their daily groceries?
Yeah.
Weekly groceries, I should say.
Yeah. It's safe to say just about everybody is a Walmart shopper. We have the pleasure to serve about 260 million customer transactions per week.
That's just groceries?
Yeah, and that's not specifically just in the United States, though.
Right,
that's across the 28 different countries that we're in. But about half of that happens in the United States. And it's interesting is because Walmart started as a general merchandise company, but really a lot of growth in the early 2000s around the grocery business. And so it's around 260 million transactions on a weekly basis. Feels
like that could be as much as 20% of the population, something like that.
Yeah.
It's enormous, any way you slice it.
That's right, right. And it's, our customers are shopping us for fresh food, packaged goods, save money, live better is kind of the Walmart promise. And no matter how you slice it, most Americans venture into Walmart looking for some type of meal solution.
So I want to talk a little bit more about, obviously, the sustainability aspect of that. And I know that Walmart has recently gotten into organics a little bit. Mm-hmm. Apparently the largest organic grocer out there as well, just by sheer volume. Tell me a little bit about that and a little bit some of the other things that you guys are doing and how you're defining it as sustainable and what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first I would just say it's starting with the customer base and what the customer's asking for. And I think that's a really important point to build on the fact that most Americans are shopping at Walmart for some type of meal solution. And what they're asking us for has changed significantly from what it was in the past. So their expectations around local sourcing, organic, sustainable agriculture, wanting to know what's in their food, where it's coming from, how it's being made, those expectations are changing. And so I know that a lot of the expertise here is very familiar with some of the sustainability and certainly environmental challenges, but we're starting to see that in the customer space as well. And so that's really why I think you could say we're kind of doubling down our efforts in all of those areas.
What are they actually asking though, and how does that feedback coming to you? I mean, customers are walking up to the clerks at Walmart and saying, "Can you get me this in organic?" I mean, how do you know that that's what's happening? And tell me a little bit more about the details of how you're responding to that demand.
Certainly. So, it's interesting is we have a number of different ways that we get customer feedback. It certainly happens through the stores, it happens through our call centers, happens through pure market research and things that most companies do. And customers are looking for fresh, quality, they're looking for organic, they're looking for locally sourced. And interestingly too, one that doesn't get talked about as much is they're looking for kind of what are the ingredients, where are they coming from, and what are you doing to produce those ingredients sustainably. And so, a couple of examples I would talk about would be a box of Cheerios. Cheerios are top of mind for me right now personally. I've got a 14-month-old little boy at home and he's a big fan of Cheerios. But what that ultimately means is, customers are wanting to know what are the ingredients, what goes into making it, and it boils down to oats and corn and wheat and soy that's being produced in the Midwest of the United States, in Canada, in local farming communities there, that when you're just shopping in a grocery store, you might not think beyond kind of the package of a box of cereal, but that's now the expectation that our customers are starting to have is, tell me what's in this food, where is it coming from, and what are you doing with your suppliers to make sure that it's produced in the most responsible way.
Now that's interesting. You mentioned a couple of products, Cheerios in particular, but you guys aren't the ones producing the Cheerios. So what say do you have in how, are they Kellogg's or General Mills? I can't remember.
General Mills.
What say do you have in how General Mills is producing that stuff to begin with?
Yep, that's right. It's a power of partnerships. So, General Mills is hearing the same thing from customers that we're hearing, and the reality is the customer doesn't come into the shopping experience and be like, differentiate necessarily between a Walmart and a General Mills. And so it's about us working together, absolutely. That's kind of the power of Walmart, if you will, is not just the number of customers that depend on us, but the number of suppliers that move product through Walmart. We're basically a vehicle for those companies to get product to customers. And so we've actually partnered with, in this particular example, we partnered with General Mills, we partnered with Kellogg, we partnered with PepsiCo, and a few different key NGO partners to start looking at sustainable agriculture in the Midwest in particular, with corn and oats and soy and wheat. And it's not even necessarily just General Mills or Kellogg, it's actually the farmers and the farm community producing the crop. And so we've had to create some really interesting partnership models that you don't necessarily think of top of mind when you're just walking through a retail environment, that it actually requires that kind of work together very far up the supply chain to ultimately be able to produce a better product for our customers.
So you guys have this massive volume, you've got this massive influence. I mean, you're powerful enough to be able to say, hey, General Mills, we want to do X, Y, and Z to the Cheerios product because the customers want it. But what actually is it? I mean, is there something out there that you've measured? Just take this Cheerios, for example.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about your decision to make this Cheerios, or to influence this Cheerios production that's actually better? Is it organic? Is it about the soil? Is it about the health of the product? What are you out there actually measuring, and can you point to?
Yeah, well, that's where we've depended a lot on the nonprofit partners. So particularly, we've been working with the Nature Conservancy, the Environmental Defense Fund, the World Wildlife Fund. And I would say starting back in 2010, they really brought to our attention some of the challenges around soil health, and particularly around fertilizer and nitrogen in agriculture. And so in this particular example, we're looking at oats and wheat production. And generally you've got the farming community using fertilizer as an agricultural technology and a tool to help produce the crop. But we have to recognize that while agriculture is vital for nutrition and health, it also has some environmental impacts. So in this example, we found out from our NGO partners that about half of the nitrogen and fertilizer that's actually being applied gets lost. So it's not absorbed into the soil, and the consequences that we then see are emissions into the atmosphere, is runoff into the waterways. Several cities here recently in the Midwest have had some water quality challenges because of this. And so in this particular example, it's working to bring technology, it's working to bring that kind of in the field agronomic expertise to farming communities to really help just kind of make sure we're continuing to innovate in next generation agriculture. And so simple practices like fertilizer kind of optimization through adaptive nutrient management, through buffer zone installations that help prevent runoff into the waterways are things that you wouldn't expect a grocer to never necessarily have expertise about. But that's the partnership model of bringing the nonprofits in, bringing the farming community together, some of our suppliers, so that we can really address some of those real challenges, and then ultimately get it back to a better product that we can start to communicate to the customers about.
And just to keep this, I like this Cheerios example is good. It's sort of concrete. Refresh my memory. Are we talking about making the standard yellow box Cheerios better in this respect that you're talking, or is this like a special brand of Cheerios?
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Yeah. This is, so for Walmart performance approach, the ability that we have is to make sustainability mainstream. And so we're really interested in improving the product profile of every item that we sell. So in this case, it would be every box of Cheerios. Now, certainly there are particular niche market demands and things that we respond to. So we do put a lot of effort into bringing more organics into the assortment, more locally sourced produce and things into the assortment. But generally across the board, we're looking to raise the profile of every box of Cheerios, get the entire kind of seafood case to meet our sustainability requirements.
So, and how are you actually ending up, since this is, you say, coming from the customer, how are you communicating this back to the customer? When I walk into a Walmart, get that yellow box of Cheerios, how do I know that these efforts are happening?
Yeah.
And
yeah. It's interesting. So you see it play out in a variety of different ways. So on the Cheerios box, for example, now there's ingredient profiles on the back of the box so that customers can kind of see the face of some of the farmers, learn what some of the specific ingredients are that go into making that product and how they were produced. And if you'd allow me to kind of jump to another example, there are other areas where we've been at this a little bit longer. So I would say our seafood business, as an example, we're now starting to roll out signage in our store that above the entire seafood assortment, it articulates what our sustainability sourcing specification is, what certifications we require. And in that example, a customer can kind of shop with confidence within that full assortment and know what the standard is that the product's meeting.
have you found that's been effective? I mean, are people gravitating towards the stuff that's, higher on the list?
Absolutely. We're definitely seeing it at Walmart, and I think other retailers would tell you they're seeing it as well. Products and companies that have been working at this for a number of years that are able to start to make claims on the package and really articulate the benefit to the customer, the sales are kind of correlated and going in that direction. They're definitely some of the fastest growth categories are things around sustainable agriculture, organics, animal welfare. We're definitely starting to see a customer that's putting their dollars into, voting for those attributes, and that's why the partnership work with our suppliers and getting as much product onto the shelf with those sustainability attributes is really what we're focused on.
Now, one of the things that Walmart is always very focused on is price.
That's right.
And always, it's the lowest price for whatever it is you want. And we in the sustainability community are hoping, we like to say that sustainability shouldn't cost more, but sometimes it does for all kinds of different reasons. Have you, is that still the case at Walmart? Is the product that's a little higher on the sustainability scale, does it tend to cost more, or have you guys found a way to kind of even that out?
Yeah. So what we stand for, save money, live better. And it goes back to your question about, are you trying to improve one box of Cheerios or the whole shelf? We'll always have some niche items and things that customers are demanding. We'll offer them choice in the assortment, and choice does tend to come with different price points. But what we're really focused on is across the board, improving sustainability, keeping it at a democratized low price. And that's what we're hearing from customers, frankly, is it's kind of, it's the challenge for business is that they expect quality, they expect price, and sustainability is the new expectation at the same time. It's not really viewed as an additional benefit that customers are looking to pay more for. And so, yes, generally because of our scale with a lot of our supplier partners, we're able to work on these partnerships and investments together while keeping price neutral is definitely our goal.
Looks like we're getting some good questions coming in. This thing doesn't seem to be working, so I'm going to look at them in a minute. But just a couple more questions to just kind of get us to that point. I want to come back to just a question on measurement, because being a company with such enormous scale, and a lot of us in this community, were originally skeptical when Walmart said, well, we're going to go organic and we're going to do this and that. Is it going to be sort of a watered down version of organic, the hardcore folks would say? But the other point of view is that even if it is, it's still better than the status quo. That pure scale is going to still be driving things just at this great volume, introducing people who might not have been able to afford that in the past, all kinds of good things. But are you guys at the point yet where you're able to say, through our sustainability efforts, we have reduced some metric by some notable amount, be it carbon, be it soil, agricultural runoff, be it, just the sheer volume of organics among people? I mean, are there big things that you're tracking that you can say year after year, we've accomplished this, and this is a tangible number that we can point to?
Sure, absolutely. I would say, first, we start in our own operations. I know this segment's really focused on agriculture, but for every retailer, stores are a big footprint. Distribution centers, fleets are a big footprint. So we do have an aspiration to be 100% renewable energy. To date, 25% of our electricity comes from renewables. We have the largest on-site solar in the United States. We have a goal to be 100% zero waste, and today in the United States we're at 84% diversion from landfill. So those are the big things that we track in terms of our own operations. Then also on the supply chain side, yes, absolutely, we track in terms of greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So over the last 4 years or so, we were focused on eliminating 20 million metric tons of greenhouse gases from our supply chain. A lot of that's done through factory energy efficiency programs in Asia, through farm programs here in the United States. We've also done a lot on a lot of investments in training programs with farmers, particularly with women, actually is an important angle for us as well. So we just recently did some work to train about 100 million women, mainly in agriculture. But if you're interested, we've got like most companies do a global responsibility report where we try to articulate our annual progress on some pretty challenging goals.
Terrific. We're about to jump into these questions, but where's it going to go from here? Give us a 5-year horizon, a 10-year horizon, some of the big ones that you're hoping to really nail between now and the near future.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, personally, I couldn't be more happy to work at Walmart because of the scale that Walmart brings to this space. So you're absolutely right. We are an everyday low-cost retailer, but nobody brings scale to sustainability like Walmart does. So I'll kind of preview for you, but later this year, you'll be hearing some pretty big news from us in the energy and climate space. We're anticipating some major milestones in our waste programs. I would also tell you, key food commodities as an industry, we've got to get that right over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, we talked about oats and corn in the Cheerios example, but whether it's palm oil, seafood, bananas, coffee, cocoa, these are some key ingredients that are important in nutrition and health. But as we're going to see global food demand rising, right? Scary numbers in terms of the amount of people and the amount of food that we're going to need. We've got to get sustainable commodities and sustainable sourcing to scale. Absolutely. And I do think that, that the number of customer interactions and the number of supplier relationships that Walmart has, that's the big value that we're hopefully going to help bring to sustainability over the next 5 to 10 years.
Terrific. All right, it's time for your questions. That was actually a good segue. You alluded to a few things. So the first question has to do with the social side of sustainability.
Yep.
We're talking about social justice in the supply chain, quickly gaining visibility, and curious to know how that fits in with your sustainability programs.
Yeah.
Presumably farm labor, a lot of the stuff that is sourced outside the United States,
Yep.
et cetera.
Yep. No, that's very important to us. And I would actually say we kind of start within our own stores and our own associates. We've made some recent announcements over the last year about investments in wages. Then kind of looking at domestically here in the United States, we certainly know there's an effort to kind of bring back jobs, help lift the middle class. We've made some pretty significant commitments to sourcing $250 billion from domestic manufacturing that we'd like to see come back to shores. But to your point, particularly in agriculture in a lot of the smallholder communities, in a lot of the developing markets, we do see social challenges as an industry. And that is where collaboration is key. So we've, particularly in Southeast Asia, have started working with a number of governments and a number of industry organizations. We've been doing a lot of philanthropy and giving through the Walmart Foundation to actually help bring worker voice into the industry using technology and smartphones and things so that we can hear more from the people actually working in those industries. And then I would say, outside of working with government on kind of policy solutions, our real opportunity is to help get smallholders connected to marketplace and connected to momentum in the marketplace where they can kind of raise their standard of living. So we've done a lot of work in Asia, in Africa, on smallholder investment, smallholder farm training, a very important angle focused on women, making sure we're getting diversity into the training programs, and ultimately giving them access to kind of sell through Walmart to help them, be able to kind of invest back in their livelihoods and improve.
Terrific. Along the same lines, the next question refers a little bit more specifically to food deserts. The fact that a lot of folks in the country, in the United States that is, lack access to nutritious foods, particularly fresh stuff, vegetables in particular.
Yep.
What's Walmart's role in helping address that problem?
Such an important topic. Nutrition and access to fresh food in particular at affordable prices is critical. And it is a challenge in countries like the United States where we've got frankly, kind of some urban communities that are underserved. So we actually, back in 2011, launched some work with the White House to specifically target USDA-defined food deserts. And so we opened, it was around 350, a little over 350 stores that we specifically targeted to be opened in food deserts.
And some of those are smaller footprint stores, right? Like meant to fit better in an urban neighborhood.
That's right. The traditional kind of Walmart supercenter doesn't always fit in the urban neighborhood, but you'll see that those have a focus on fresh, and again, kind of the Walmart value proposition is that it's at an affordable price. But I'd also tell you, if you follow any of kind of the more recent announcements that we've put out there into the public, it's so much more than just looking at our stores. It's about how we use technology to connect people to products, and particularly to food. So we've just, some of the investments that we've made in a recent acquisition with Jet.com is a way that we're looking at actually more kind of home delivery methods. And we also announced some pilots in starting in Phoenix and in Denver, where we're looking at kind of the Uber model of product delivery and rideshare services, where customer is not dependent on getting to the store, but we're trying to look at technology partnerships and innovation to see how we can get the product to the customer regardless of where they're at.
Terrific. It's a good question. Focuses a little bit on what we started talking about initially to say that this was about listening to the consumer, and the consumer drives this. But the reality is the food system's complex. There's all kinds of different problems and challenges out there. Beyond just reacting to what the customer's telling you, what is Walmart doing to be proactive about addressing the problem, of their own accord?
Yeah, that's a great point. Walmart's been working on sustainable agriculture since, for over 10 years now. And it was not at the time because the customer was knocking on the door asking for it. So I think it's an important distinction to make, that what the consumer goods industry is seeing just today in the millennial generation is, yes, the millennials are asking more for it. Moms and dads planning meals for their kids are wanting to know more about the food. But we were really, tried to be ahead of the customer, proactive, anticipating where we needed to go. But to your point, it's what the customer will never understand. The general customer will never understand the projected food demand globally, and what most of you in the room are very familiar with, the impact of the agricultural sector on water, on energy, on emissions. Those are things that we have to do on behalf of the customer because they look to Walmart as a trusted brand. We've got to go there even if they're not asking for it. The simple expectation is that we should know about it. We should be taking care of it on their behalf. And
yeah, it's another good segue. Speaking of things that the average customer doesn't understand, it's the food, water, energy nexus. This recognition of the complexity of all this stuff and how it is related. Is that concept or something similar something that Walmart considers when you do make these proactive moves? When you do say you've been talking about this for 10 years, whether the customer knows it or not, what's the thought process that goes on behind big connectivity issues like that?
Yeah. Well, clearly they're connected. Food production is dependent on water and energy, and it will continue to be. We've actually, one program that we use, the Sustainability Index, it's a supplier scorecard that we use to measure supplier performance on sustainability year over year. We do the program every year. And we're actually asking our suppliers, what % of your supply chain can you trace? What % of your ingredients do you know where they're coming from? What's the energy footprint? What's the water footprint? What's the food waste footprint? Kind of the endless list of potential issues that we have to make trade-offs between. So where we've really been focusing on getting ahead of this is actually building the supplier capability. To your point, like we're not out there buying oats and grains to make the Cheerios, but we do manage the purchase relationships with the suppliers. And so that's where our leverage is to really build the capability of our suppliers, that it's your expectation to kind of know where you're sourcing from, know how much energy you're using, know how much water you're using, and every year we want to be seeing improvements.
So we've got time for about one more. I want to pick a toughie because it's a specific example. It alludes a little bit to what we talked about, or global social issues and so on.
Yeah.
There was this issue with shrimp, this Aquastar shrimp supplier that allegedly was involved with slave labor. Can you tell us a little bit about your reaction to discovering that problem, how you set about addressing that problem, and how that kind of thing will be prevented in the future? Yeah.
Certainly the seafood industry in particular in Southeast Asia has some challenges. And so absolutely, first is any proven allegations in our supply chain are dealt with immediately, and that supplier relationship is suspended. But the issue that we have to face as an industry is that we have to be part of the solution in helping Southeast Asia improve. And walking away from business is not going to solve the problems in Southeast Asia. And so while we do manage supplier relationships, expectations, and contracts and enforcement with them, what we're much more focused on is how do we as a collective industry go directly to those regions that are struggling and help be part of the solution. And so it requires conversations with government. We send Walmart sourcing teams into these countries to have conversations with government about policy and about policy enforcement. And then it's also about worker voice and raising the visibility of workers in the supply chain. So in this particular example, in shrimp, we have actually made a series of grants to an organization known as the International Justice Mission, which is helping to through technology, bring visibility to where workers are in the supply chain, to what vessels and things are being monitored, and to give people in those production spaces the ability through technology to let us know and to let governments know and to let our suppliers know what's kind of going on in that space. So it is a very real example, absolutely, and I would say it's one that requires kind of a multi-pronged solution with all kind of sectors of stakeholders participating, and we're excited about some of the work that's gone on in the last couple of years to really begin to address and help lift up that industry.
Terrific. Well, it looks like we just filled the time just about perfectly.
All right.
And I want to thank you very much for sitting down for a brief convo. Perhaps a round of applause for Brittany.
Yeah, thank you.
Good, good.